This is the Etsy Conversations podcast, episode 249. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the podcast. I'm your host, Ijama, and welcome to this new episode. My guest this week is Hilary Pfeifer, and she runs the Etsy shop Bunny with a Toolbelt. Hilary, thank you so much for being my guest, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Ijama.
You're welcome. So right before we jump into it, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and just how you discovered Etsy? You've been on Etsy since almost the beginning, so Congratulations.
Thanks. Basically, I've been making my living since the very late 80s. I was about, 20 around then. And I kind of always had the bent of making things and selling them since I was a little kid anyway. But I was very interested in figuring out how I could make it my life. And I left college after the first 2 years. I wasn't very interested in doing that. I really, really wanted to start a business. And so I moved back to Eugene, Oregon, where I was born and raised. And I started working for this company that made ceramic jewelry out of colored porcelain. And there was a lot of scrap that got thrown away. And I know that the owner was running it like a business, with cost effective. But the way my brain is wired is that I like to find ways to reuse materials and not waste. Mm-hmm. So I just started taking it home, even though I had no kiln and very little ceramic experience, except for like really little kid kind of ceramic experience. So anyway, I just started taking it home because I knew that you could dry it out and reconstitute it. And so then I started taking night classes at University of Oregon in ceramics and started my own business making beads out of the porcelain and stringing them into strands that sort of acted like prayer beads.
Oh, yeah.
And then pocket stones, and they had a word in them. And just built this little business up doing that. And that's sort of what I consider to be my undergraduate degree, in a sense, is like learning how to run a business.
Yeah.
And then after about 6 years of that, I just felt like I wanted to do something more conceptual, something, because running the business was the most interesting thing about this. There wasn't a lot of more places I could go with design. And so I decided to move up to Portland and go to art school. And just then, Oregon College of Art and Crafts started a degree program. And I really knew that I lacked skills, hand skills that I really wanted, particularly like wood. And then I ended up getting a degree in the metalsmithing department because they had the broadest skill set that, like if you know how to make a hinge, you can do a lot of other things.
Really?
And so I did that for 4 years. When I graduated, I was completely sick of the clay business, but it was great because it coasted me through school, essentially. And I started a greeting card business. Now, somewhere in the middle of those two businesses, I came up with the name Bunny with a Toolbelt because I was also like making metal angel ornaments and, gift tags and just, I don't know, I just love making big production style bodies of work to sell. And so Bunny with a Toolbelt seemed like a great business name because, tool belt sort of implies you can do anything. Mm-hmm. And Bunny's really sweet. And I like to joke that it's one of the only decisions I made in my 20s that is stuck now into my 50s because I still love that business name. It's great.
It's very unique.
Yeah. Well, then I had a greeting card business for about 10 years. And that was all handled through a sales rep. And I learned a ton about design. And then right around the time the recession hit in the late 2000s, that's when Etsy started to come on the scene. And people weren't buying expensive greeting cards anymore. And So I kind of switched over because I really wanted to make little animals out of wood.
Mm.
And I use all reclaimed wood, like scraps from other people.
Mm.
So I really kind of, I was so ready for some kind of a sales platform to be out there, to be able to sell on the internet. People were just starting to get comfortable with putting their credit cards online and or using that to purchase items. And so I don't know, I've just been ever since then just sort of plugging away and growing this aspect of my work.
Wow, Hilary, there's so much I want to ask you just based on your journey so far. First of all, when you were selling in the 80s, I know it was very different then than now. Were you doing most of your sales in person? Did you rely on vendor shows or craft fairs, or were you selling your products through retail outlets back then?
What I was primarily doing was I thought I was going to be a graphic designer through most of my teenage years. Mm-hmm. And so I just sort of built up some chops on layout and design. And so those skills came in handy when I started running my own business. And so what I did was I designed this brochure, and it was essentially 3 8.5 by 11 sheets folded in half. And then so it was a little booklet, because the porcelain beads that I was making had a story. It originated with a friend of mine who had cancer. I was giving her something to rub to soothe herself, during painful times. And then I had a list. I had about 100 different words I would put on the bead strands. And in the middle, I had a color photo. I had a product shot taken of all the variations that I did. So everything was just Xeroxed except for that center sheet, and it was just Xeroxed on the back. And so I just figured out who my target market, and for that, it was a combination of galleries, and feminist bookstores, which there were still a lot of those around then, and New Age bookstores. And in particular, the feminist and the New Age bookstores, they were just starting to add on gift items at the counter to kind of help support those niche markets that they were serving. And the feminist bookstore market in particular, they a couple of those sellers were so great. We just developed such a great relationship, and they had a really strong network and a publication that went out to all the feminist bookstores in the country. And at that time, there was at least one in most states. So I was able to buy that mailing list, and then I could directly appeal to them. And I actually still sometimes use mail as to market if I really want to get somebody's attention. Sometimes getting a really nice thing in the mail is better than an email that you can just delete.
Yes. Yep, that's very true. Are you still able to buy lists of targeted lists of mailing addresses so you know who to mail to, or has that all but disappeared now in this internet age?
I don't really know, because the way I do it now is I do the research online.
Okay.
And now I wouldn't say I do that with stores as much as we haven't even gotten into this, but I just opened a little. I'm renting a little window space near my house, on a business street that I can show off all my stuff in my Etsy shop. So it's like, it's sort of a new territory. And so I'm promoting that as sort of to the media, not to sell. I'm not looking to sell outside of Etsy anymore, but I'm looking to get new customers who can come look at the work for free in this little, I call it the window of wonders.
Yeah.
So I use that direct mail tactic to get reporters interested, essentially.
Okay, I see. Now, speaking of having been, and I do want to come back to what you're doing in the retail space, because I think that's very unique and different. But now you've been on Etsy since 2007, which is a long time. So you've seen the changes that have gone on through Etsy, which we've talked about on the podcast quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But what I want to ask you specifically is, what keeps you on the platform? I know a lot of times because of the changes, some people have a hard time adjusting to the changes, or they don't appreciate the changes that Etsy makes, which can be unsettling, no doubt about that. But you've stayed the course. What is it about selling on Etsy that keeps you loyal to that platform?
Well, initially when they started up, I had just spent like a month trying to set up my own shopping cart on my own website. And I was really frustrated with the process. And I felt like when Etsy came on the scene, I was like, oh, great. It's great to be part of something bigger, and they can do the work to draw new customers in. And then I can just be the best I can be on that platform.
Yeah.
And so that was my very first thought about it. And I had some pretty early success there, I think in part because it used to be formatted differently. So, and I think because the audience was smaller, I felt like their homepage sort of drew you in. There was always a featured artist, and the blog I always just, was looking at that homepage all the time to see. I guess the treasuries too changed it up, But anyway, I pitched an article for the blog because I was making wedding cake toppers, but I also am an ordained minister through Universal Life Church, and I pretty much only do that for friends.
Okay.
I'm not interested in making that a business or anything, but I thought, oh, I've got this great story. I officiated a wedding and made the wedding cake toppers, and they liked it. And so that helped me get noticed by a lot of people. And then they made me a featured seller after that. So between those two things, I think I got years of business just by people bookmarking my site.
Yeah.
And then it just dropped off after a while. And, now I notice that the biggest shift I've seen with Etsy is it used to be more focused on just one-of-a-kind handmade pieces. Mm-hmm. And now, of course, they've also expanded into vintage and supplies.
Yes.
And that's fine. I'm fine with that diversity. Everything is moving more towards trends now. Yeah. But I still feel like there's a place for me there because I still, I think the trends that I look at personally are more like, German traditions from, people who still care about these little German animals that I had when I was a kid. You can make your own little forest or something. And so I don't know, it doesn't make any sense for me to look at marketing trends, but I still think that since they pay so much attention to SEO and, being found on Google, that it still benefits me.
Okay.
To be part of that. And it's harder to draw, if you're just a lone entity out there, it's really hard to get traffic.
Yeah. And that's the battle a lot of e-commerce sellers face is when trying to make a decision whether to stay on the platform or leave altogether is the traffic factor. You can't deny the traffic that you get from there, but that does make sense. So,
and then also, if I could just add one teeny little thing to that too, is that I'm so lucky. I've had so many of my customers actually write a review, and so I'd be losing all that too.
Yes, actually, that's true. Interestingly enough, there was a company that I remember coming across, must have been maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, that they had a product that moved your reviews from any e-commerce site that you were on, whether it was eBay or Amazon or Etsy, over to your e-commerce website so that people could see that you had previously had or currently had or have a successful selling record somewhere else, so that if someone just lands on your website, you don't just look like you're somewhere in the middle of nowhere and set this up and they don't know who you are. They can actually see that you have a history selling somewhere else and you're real and you've been providing good service to them. And I don't remember the name of the company, and I don't know if they're even still in business. It seemed like a good idea to me, but I don't know if they actually executed it correctly. So if there's any tech wizard out there listening and you're stuck for a project to work on, that's probably something that would be beneficial for people looking to set up their e-commerce website, but, don't want to do it in a vacuum, so they don't look like they're just fresh off the boat.
Yeah. I actually, now that I have this little brick and mortar spot, I listed it as a place on Google, and that pulls in Etsy's reviews for me. It took a week or something, but I look at it a lot because, I've been very curious how it changes when I just put in Bunny with a tool belt into Google. And, now it's, of course my website comes up there and Etsy comes soon after, but now there's a little picture of my shop on the side, and then you can do updates, sort of like you do Etsy updates or Instagram posts or something. But last week I finally noticed, oh, look, my little Etsy reviews they're tiny, but they're down there. So I think, Google's got its feelers out, pulling in all kinds of data. So
interesting. That's good
grateful
to know.
for that. Yeah.
Now, for anyone else who is listening, in order to set up, to have a listing in Google, must you have a physical presence somewhere?
Yeah.
Yes, you do.
If I can explain exactly. Yeah, I suppose I could have listed my studio before, but since that's out of my house, I don't really want to.
No, on Google.
Have people knocking on my door.
Yeah. Okay.
I do a few open studios a year, but honestly, it just never really occurred to me until I had this spot. And then right after I started, opened up the little shop, I took an SEO class here in town, and that kind of got me thinking about Google and being found there. So
yeah, that's something we haven't talked too much about on the podcast, but I know only because I've heard that, it's good to get listed as a business in Google, because it does help with search engine optimization. And when people do local searches, you'll show up more often because Google knows all this stuff. Yeah. So yeah. But I guess I'll find somebody who's an expert on that, and we can talk about that. Yeah.
Now that I think about it, I bet you do have to have a physical location, because I had to wait for them to mail me a piece of mail at the shop with an activation code.
Oh, okay.
So,
but it's free to be listed in there, right?
Yep.
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
They want you to pay them money to advertise.
Yeah.
Yelp too. I listed on Yelp, but they would not stop calling me. I had to block the numbers, like 3 or 4 of them.
Okay, so by the time you opened your Etsy shop, you had already been in business. You were already selling. You weren't new to running your own business. When you came on Etsy, what was your original goal? Was it to move your entire business presence on there? Or did you initially just think you'd try it out to see whether or not it would go anywhere?
Yeah, probably more the latter.
Okay.
I honestly can't remember. I know that I was very excited that about finding new audiences anywhere in the world, And, I could see clearly, I was an early adopter of, internet, having a computer, making a website. I remember nobody else I knew had a website when I built mine. And even one of my teachers in art school said, don't do a website, then people are going to see your work and copy it. And I'm like, but then people will see my work and buy it. Like, how are they not? Math doesn't work.
It's funny how we change, how with time our thought processes and our reasoning changes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
So anyway, I was just excited about the potential of Etsy,
yeah.
and I just knew that the everything was changing. So.
One of the things I like that you're doing is you haven't just focused only on e-commerce. We've already talked about, well, you've mentioned in passing your retail presence, Bunny with the Toolbelt Window of Wonders. But you also have self-published some children's books, and you have a deck of playing cards. And so can we talk about just, first of all, how you decided on the different streams of income that you were going to develop and how that all comes together under the umbrella of Bunny with the Toolbelt?
I think I'd always had it sort of in the back of my mind that I would love to write an alphabet book. I've always loved word games and word play, stuff like that. And so, I don't know, just one day, I think I was sort of just, I don't know, thinking, and all of a sudden I came up with the word alphabet. And I was like, oh, that's it. I got to do this. And and Kickstarter was brand new, and I knew that, it costs, it takes a certain amount of time to, my idea was to illustrate the books with my sculptures so that I could have something that I could sell for like hardcover for $20. And then maybe people would buy an original piece of art to go with the book. But for some people who can't afford to buy my art in person, a physical object, maybe they would want just the book, and that's more in their budget. And so, it sort of served multiple purposes of like adding another really low end thing to my repertoire.
Yeah.
So I just thought it was going to be one and done. And I loved doing the first book so much. And it was really, I don't know, it was also maybe like Etsy, I was an early adopter on Kickstarter, and they used to have a craft section. And I thought, well, I'm going to stand out more if I pick craft rather than art or children's books, and sure enough, they like put me in there. Every week they put a newsletter out where they featured 3 projects, and woo, I was just like funded in an hour. It was great.
Wow.
Except it was so early that people weren't trained yet that they could keep pledging over, like it could go double the amount you asked.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Now people know a little bit more, but anyway, it was so lucky to get that, and then, and I just had such a good experience with the whole book process. Then I thought, well, I'm going to do alphabet about dogs, and then I could just keep going. I mean, I've got at least 10 other titles in my head that I'd like to do. That just, I've done a bird one, and I've done a cat one, and then last year I wrote one about foxes, but that's more of a it's about foxes and recycling. It's not an alphabet book. And then one year I decided to do a playing card deck. I also used Kickstarter to fund that. And, I've gotten new audiences from doing Kickstarter. I sort of also think of it as advertising.
Now, for anyone who's listening and doesn't understand what Kickstarter is or why you would use that platform, can you explain why you went that route?
Yeah, it was sort of a new, God, I hope I'm right about this, but my memory is that it was somewhat new to ask for money for a project using, the internet, or at least they developed it the best first. And so, it's like there's people out there who are just want to give money to creative people who, have an idea. I mean, I had somebody on Alphabet pledge $2,000. I was supposed to make them a custom piece. I bugged them for years, and they never took me up on it.
Whoa.
they just wanted to support my work.
Yeah.
Now that has not ever happened again, so it's something I can rely on. But I also think of it as, my rewards. So it's set up so that you set a goal of what you need. And for me, usually what I set is my cost of publishing, the cost to have it professionally photographed, and give me a month in the studio where I don't have to do anything else and, can cover my bills. And then fine, if it goes up from there, no problem. But those are my 3 biggest expenses for those books. So then the rewards are essentially like shopping, like you get a book for this much, you get an original piece of art for this much. And I want to make sure everybody feels like they're getting a good deal because they're helping me, with this chunk of money. And usually I design a few products that are related to the book, but can be like at a under $50 price point so that, that's an easy amount of money to spend for a lot of people. And then they get something in return that they would have spent maybe another 10 for. So.
Okay, so just to be clear, you run the Kickstarter campaigns, which for anyone who doesn't know, these are crowdfunding campaigns where you get people to donate money so you can do a project. And so you run them for your books, and then as thank you gifts, you give some of the products that you make to the donors.
Yep, and I make sure it's all on the same theme.
The book.
Like if the book is about dogs, everything you get is going to be either the book or something dog related or art from the book.
And when you are running a Kickstarter campaign, do you have to do a lot of marketing for that? So do you have to let people on your email list know? Do you buy ads, like Facebook ads, to get the word out? Or does Kickstarter help with getting the word out about this project that you're raising funds for?
I don't pay for anything, but oh man, you get so many, almost daily I'll get somebody whose business is to promote and, your Kickstarter campaign. But,
oh, right. Yeah.
But I don't know. I feel like my stuff is so unusual. I think that works maybe more for tech or design objects, but I don't do any of that stuff. But Kickstarter, if they like your project, they'll make it a pick, and so that's like if you look under the category of children's books, they'll have, their favorites or whatever. And usually I've gotten in on that. And I brings in some people, but I, after all this time have not such a bad email list. So between that and Facebook, that's really, it's more about me getting the word out to my people.
Okay.
But then I do get new people through Kickstarter too, but by and large, it's me putting the word out.
Okay. And so you chose to go the self-publishing route versus traditional publishing. Is there a reason that you did it that way?
I wanted to do it my way.
Okay.
There was a period of time where I thought maybe I would seek out an agent.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just go back and forth on whether that's the best way to do it. It's not a huge money maker for me in general, but I used to do some local craft fairs in the winter season, and now that I have the shop, I'm going to try not doing that because that would be great. But it did, I just sort of think of it as brings in, probably another couple $100 when I do those shows. So that's worth it.
If self-publishing, if writing the books is doing the book publishing what you meant what you were referring to when you said it's not a huge money maker for you?
Yeah.
Okay. So what's the incentive for doing the books?
I like it.
Oh, okay. That's always.
It does bring in, it brings in good passive
Something.
income. That,
Yeah.
you know what? That was another incentive, is that, everything I sell, I have to make. But now with I have the books and the playing cards, I can just put it in the mail.
Okay, I
I do
see.
have to store it, but
Right. And then when, like with the playing cards, once you sell out, do you make another batch, or it's you have a limited run?
yeah, so I used this company, United States Playing Card Company. They're the ones who make the bicycle decks.
Oh, yeah.
And so they will print for anybody who submits design. And, there's I think I paid about $2.50 to $3 per deck, something like that. And you have to buy 2,500.
Whoa.
So, yeah, but then almost half of those, I think, went to Kickstarter backers.
Oh, okay.
And then, then for the past however many years it's been, 5, 6 years, I sell them here and there.
Okay.
And and they're really high quality. And then in addition to the decks, I think I bought a few extra boxes too, because if they have an overrun, because they gang you up with other printing, so they offer to sell you for a cheaper price whatever the overrun is. And so I bought all those too. And then they say you can buy what's called an uncut sheet, which is like, first they print them front to back on this big poster size thing, and then some machine cuts them into the cards and puts them in the boxes. So you can buy for, I don't know, $5 each or something, the uncut sheets. And some hardcore playing card collectors, they want those. And so I think I bought about 100 of those. So I just have some, that as another passive income source.
So with the uncut sheets, does that mean the cards will never get played? They just get framed,
it's like a
uncut?
poster.
Oh, wow.
It's cool.
Like
it's really cool because the quality is so high on what needs to be a card. And they've got a little bit of perforation, but you can flip it front to back, and all the backs are on one side and all the fronts are on the other side.
I know. I'm looking at yours now. I thought maybe you sold them uncut just so that, people have the joy of, breaking them apart. But no, it's.
I wonder if anybody's done that. It would be a lot more expensive way to get a card deck.
Yeah. Now let's talk about being in a retail space. So what was your thought process what was the thought process going into selling in a physical location, and how has that affected your business? Because now you have to consider paying for rent and the overhead that comes with having a retail space. Has it been worth it? Does it pay for itself? And before I ask my next question, I'll let you answer those.
Okay. So I'll just start by saying it's still relatively new.
Okay.
I think I'm in my 3rd month now of this.
Okay.
So I, as I mentioned before, live a block and a half away from one of Portland's small little neighborhoods that was set up with streets and streets, blocks and blocks of business storefronts. And I did a lot of volunteering. It's also identified as an arts neighborhood. And I've owned my house for 16 years now, and I've done lots and lots of volunteering in the neighborhood. So the group that works as the business association has a little incubator space in their office. Mm-hmm. And there's a gallery down the street that got their start there. And they were there for maybe 3 years and then moved up to a bigger location where they could more easily do retail without you having to go through the office first, And then I was thinking about getting it, and somebody else swooped in first. And then when he left, they remembered that I was interested. And so I grabbed it as quick as I could. And what it is it's an old storefront building. And so it has like a window that you can look in from the front, from the sidewalk, and then it sort of angles as it goes into the door so people could stand over there too. And I had this thought, it'd be great to use it as a showroom essentially. And try to train people like to enjoy, like people walk by and they can just look at it for free. I've got, over the years, I've got lots of characters in the books that I still have. And I've got all these little animals that make this scene, this little forest scene in the front. And there's people who walk by every day and look at it and just enjoy it. And then a certain percentage of those people see that I sell through Etsy. And so right now, I just decided when I started, I said, okay, my goal, since I'm kind of new at having anything as a retail that I'm running, I'm just going to have a goal this year of trying to get my Etsy site, like at Christmas season, like fall and Christmas, I definitely make enough money. I know I'd cover it, but I was like, okay, I'm going to try now during the slow months to just cover the rent and then, try to build up my business chops and, eventually make it more profitable. But I'm going to set a small goal now of breaking even with this.
Yeah.
And it's been way better than that. I've definitely made profit every month so far, which is yay.
Yeah.
But then I also came up with this idea to kind of guarantee that I pay the rent, which is that every month on the 16th of the month, I have a Sweet 16 sale. And the first month I just found 16 things that I'd had around for a while. And then I offer them at $25. And right now my rent is $400. And so I just make enough to cover the rent. And it's essentially like selling wholesale, which I've done in the past anyway. And every month I do a different set of 16 things. And then people feel like they're getting a great deal. And I feel like I'm just selling something at wholesale, which isn't that unusual, but I get to pick, which is great. And it drives a lot of new interest.
So your Sweet 16 sale happens one day a month on the 16th of the month?
Well, what I do is I have a special section on my Etsy site called Sweet 16. Okay. And on the 16th, I let all those things go live at 9 a.m. my time, Pacific time. And then until they sell out, they're there. And so far, I haven't sold out yet every month, but sometimes people end up buying other stuff. They come for the Sweet 16, they leave with something else.
Oh, I see. So now how do you promote your Sweet 16 sale? Is it mainly just previous customers that are aware of it, or do you get the word out to your mailing list?
Yeah, mailing list, Instagram, Facebook, and then I have a sign in the window that explains it too.
Oh, okay.
So, and that's worked too. I've had, people, because there's a little part of one of my display cases in the window that is just the whatever's left from the Sweet 16 that's going on. And then, potentially you could look and go, oh, I want that. Oh, great. It's only $25. But
nice. Okay. So now how do you manage your time? What does your typical day look like between just everything that you're doing with respect to running your Etsy shop, but then also having a retail presence as well and an e-commerce website?
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know if we've made this abundantly clear yet, but I don't sit in that shop and wait for customers either. I just go, and I usually go early in the morning and I sneak things in and I take out what's sold. And then there's times when I do, like last weekend was the big annual street fair for the street. So I got a booth right out front and showed people the window and kind of used it as advertising. And that was fun. I might try out being in there in December, like between Thanksgiving and Christmas, just sort of being there on the weekend.
Oh, like physically there.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm not sure yet because I'm typically really busy shipping stuff during that time of year. So it just, going to play that by ear. But my day, I usually wake up early and kind of look at emails, do the crossword puzzle. I like to go walk my dog. I can walk to a UPS store that's about a mile away from my house with my dog, they let me walk in and they let me drop off prepaid UPS or USPS packages, which is awesome because then I feel like I'm doing two things at once, like walking him and shipping. So that usually happens in the morning. And I don't know, it fluctuates somewhat what my day looks like, but I'm a huge list maker. And one of my kitchen cabinets is just this, it's like the big picture of what my year is, what my goals are for the year. And then like when it gets into the second half of the year, I usually have a clipboard that has everything separated into weeks. And then I sort of set my goals of, okay, this week I gotta do all my nativity sets, and that keeps me on track so that I'm really ready when the holidays kick in and it gets really busy.
Okay. And one of the things that you mentioned, and we talked briefly about it before starting the recording, was that right now you spend most of your Etsy time during, or rather your shop gets busier during the second half of the year on Etsy. So during the first half of the year, what are you primarily focusing on?
Well, I sort of have have a whole other body of work that I do. Last 5 years, I've gotten really lucky with getting some big public projects. And so I've done some designs in stainless steel that are permanent outdoor pieces. And so that, usually if I have one or two projects in a year, that sort of pushes towards the beginning half. And so that's great. That coasts me through. And they also pay a lot better. And so it gives me time to like focus on business. During that slow time of year, I also kind of really look at my website and my, now with the new shop, I've been listening to podcasts like yours, and I'm going to take a business class this fall through the community college here and just sort of really try to just re-up my business chops. And so I don't know. I'm pretty good at filling my time.
Yeah. Now, also, before we move on from that, speaking of upping your business chops, one of the things, because you've had, a number of years experience running your own business, you have a resource specifically for artists.
Yep. So what you're referring to is my business tips list, right?
Yes.
So early on in the Kickstarter process, I had, in addition to all the people who want me to pay them to promote my Kickstarter, I also get a lot of requests from people who want advice, people I don't know. And so I decided that, I'm just going to write up this little, it's sort of a business book. It's only 30 pages long, but I just made it into this PDF, and it was just a $5, reward, so that I could just easily say, here's my business tips, and then not take up a lot of my time. But the other day, when I was anticipating talking to you, I decided that I'd put it up on my website, and anybody can look at them if they want. And it's information that I don't mind sharing. I like to help people, and then you can read that.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
So if you go to my website, buddingwithattoolbelt.com, and scroll all the way down till you see just a picture of a artichoke. It's like a what do they call those? Easter egg down there.
Yeah. And I'll have a link to buddingwithattoolbelt.com so you can check that out, and then check out this completely free resource that Hilary is offering, just based on her own experience, which is always good to hear from someone who's actually done it and isn't just theorizing. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
One of the things I want to talk about, which I find really nice in your Etsy shop, is your product photography. Do you do it all yourself? And did you take special classes to learn how to do in fact, just over the last couple of weeks, I just learned that there is a thing called craft product photography, specifically for sellers of craft products, to learn how to take pictures. Did you know about this?
Well, I mean, back before digital cameras, I definitely took a lot of classes, but
Yeah.
I'm not very good with non-digital, like once the iPhone came in, I was like, hallelujah. But I definitely look at what others do a lot, and
Mhm.
Etsy's got that great section on their seller's handbook that talks about it as well. But I set up a little photo area in my basement, and
Mhm.
it's super simple. It's just like, I got a stand-up desk from somebody for free, and I put behind it just a white, a
A
bend.
backdrop?
What is it? It's like a piece of formica or something, but it's white. So I make it fades up so there's no background. And then I've got just some clamp lamps with lights, one on the top and two on the side. And then I went to the fabric store and bought fabric that would sort of, it's not professional photography fabric. It's some kind of like inner lining for 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 making jackets or
Yeah,
something. It's
yeah.
white and it just filters the light. And
Oh.
so I just always have that set up so that I can just quickly shoot things. Like if I tend to make work in big batches, so I just take it down there and shoot them all. And
Now, when you say it filters the light, do you hang the fabric over the lights
yeah,
that you use?
yeah,
Oh, it's
I sort
not
of make
your
a light
backdrop.
box. It's open on the front end,
Uh-huh.
and then the back is my background, my
Okay.
white background, and then the top and the two sides are this piece of fabric that's like it's like an
Oh.
opaque kind of white.
Yeah.
So it takes away that harshness of the light bulb.
Yes, yes, yes. Oh, okay. So then you don't have to rely on waiting for good sunlight outside.
Oh yeah, I used to do that.
I know I do.
But finally it's like, I got to make this a thing because
Okay.
um
So,
and there are times when I pay to have professional shot, like on my books, I do that.
okay.
And then sometimes if I have products that I really want to, get some bigger legs,
Mhm.
I pay to have somebody photograph those for me. Like if
Okay.
I want to get publicity for it, let's just say,
Okay. I
rather than
see.
just an Etsy listing. But if something's just going on my Etsy site, I think iPhone is perfectly fine.
Now, how long does it take you from the time you get an idea for a new product to create it, list it, and have it ready for sale?
Well, let's see. I tend to work in big batches,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes I sketch. Like recently with the shop, it's sort of rekindled. Oh, what new things? Because now I have this incentive to keep that little scene evolving all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
And I also have a little sign that I put in the back of the scene that I change every Saturday. That's like, can you find these things? And I write six, because there's like hundreds of things in this shop because I'm a maniac who's made a lot of things over time, and it's so great to get to show it all now.
Yeah.
But I also want to add this freshness all the time. So I've been looking through my old sketchbooks, and what I'll typically do is I'll just like make like 30 things, and I'll do all the shaping and the constructing all in one day. And then the
Mhm.
next day I'll paint all my base coat on them. And then I'll spend the next however long it takes to paint the details on. Like, say I have an elephant that has like a rainbow trunk and cloud, like it's painted blue with clouds on it, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'll break that up and I'll be doing everything, even if I'm painting a cat, I'll just be doing all the stages at once. And so it kind of speeds up the process, but then I end up with 30 new pieces at once.
Okay.
And then I shoot them all at once. And then one other thing I really love about Etsy and makes me stay there is that you can copy a listing and then
Yeah.
change the pictures, change a couple of the details, maybe the measurement, and then post it, and it's, oh man, it saves me so much time based on what I used to have to do.
Yeah. Would you list all 30 in one day or release them in small, like one at a time or two at a time?
I tend to list them all at once just because I just work in batches like that. But
Okay.
I do a slow release on Instagram and Facebook just so I can
Okay.
have something new to post. Like I try to post something every day that's either a new item, picture of somebody liking the shop, or something in
Okay.
my life that seems pertinent. I should also mention that I do have a policy, and I haven't had a lot of people take me up on it yet, but I do open the shop by appointment for people who want to spend $100. So,
Oh, that's the retail space.
yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Now, you mentioned social media. You're on Facebook and Instagram, and you just said you post one product a day. Is that pretty much
Or
all
some,
you do on social media, or do you use it in other ways to help promote your product and drive traffic to your shop?
well, I do have a Twitter account, but to be honest, somewhere along the line, and I honestly don't remember the name of whatever I used to do this with, but
Uh-huh.
I learned that there was some kind of a way that you could have every time you post a listing on Etsy, it goes to Twitter immediately.
Oh,
And then
yes.
I also do that with my Instagram posts. And then, I mean, I kind of pick and choose a little bit, but then, so I just let that have that presence there. But I don't think I ever post anything completely original just for Twitter.
Okay.
But then Instagram, I also have push because I have a Bunny with a Toolbelt page on Facebook. And so I let my Instagram posts go
Go
there.
there.
So it's doing, triple work for me, which is great.
Yeah.
And then, but then, since I'm also just on Facebook myself and looking around, every time I find like a ridiculous video or a thing about an animal, I post it on the Bunny with the Toolbelt Facebook, because then it's just sort of something just fun and
Yeah.
mindless and isn't all about me selling stuff.
Now, just for anyone who is wondering, and I don't know if this is the same tool that you used, but I have used this in the past to they call them recipes, so that anytime you post something on Etsy, it automatically will send a tweet on your Twitter account. And what I used was, it's called IFTTT, which stands for if this, then that. And so you go in and you can create a recipe that says, if I list a new product on Etsy, then tweet it out to this account. And so you link your Etsy shop, you link your Twitter account, and then every time you post, you don't even have to, how when you post a new listing on Etsy, they're the social media buttons. You can send it to Facebook. You don't even have to do that, because this recipe will automatically do that for you every time that you have a new listing. So I'll put a link to If This Then That for anyone who wants to check it out, and it's free. And you just go, they have thousands of recipes that you can use. They'll suggest some for you, like some popular ones or ones that they think might be helpful to you, but then you can create your own recipe and say, yes, if this happens, then this should happen. It's pretty handy and nifty.
Yeah. I have a tan too. I love it. And I just remembered another thing that I have do that is I do have a blog on Blogger that's related to Bunny with the Toolbelt, and it'll post like the first sentence or something, whatever fits in the characters, and then have a link so somebody could click and read, whatever I've posted about. I don't really post as much. I kind of use that blog now for when I'm in a project, like let's say I'm working on a new book, then I'll be posting whatever I'm finishing up all the time. But,
okay. So like for progress updates.
Yeah, when I'm doing something exciting, but otherwise it's idle.
All right.
I took off the dates though. It only says the day of the week. So maybe if somebody looks at it, they'll be like, "Oh, look, Tuesday," and but they won't know it was
Actually,
Tuesday.
I did see
Hey.
that. I did see that, and I was like, wow, she does a good job, because I think your most recent one was like Saturday or
Yeah, it
something
was
recent,
right.
and I thought, wow, she's doing such a good job keeping up. But
Told
yes,
you.
so Blogger allows you to do that. Is that a certain theme, or it's a setting in the system?
Yeah, I'm sure it's a setting.
Okay.
It's been years since I did that, but I was so thrilled when I found it. It's like,
Yes. All right. So what, Hilary, would you say are some of the things that you think that you've done that have just helped you find success in what you're doing? And I say what you're doing because you're not just limited to Etsy. You're really outside the Etsy box, but Etsy is one of those tools. What would you say is something that you're doing that's really helped you just be able to do this full time?
well, I mean, I think it sort of grew out of a place where, when I was 20, I didn't have a mortgage to pay. I had a lot less overhead, so I just sort of got a taste of what it was like to work for myself. And
Mm-hmm.
then I've just stubbornly, not wanted to go back to another life after that. But that can be motivating too. But I'm open to trying things. I've
Yeah.
done lots of craft shows over time, and I kind of move away from them and then move back in, but they bring new audiences and conversations and business connections. So,
Mm-hmm.
I won't say I'll never go back to it again. Sort of seeing where the store takes me now, the retail space, but I don't know. I think just being open to trying things,
Yeah.
and especially, like I haven't tried too many things that are really expensive. So, there are ways, and there's so much information out there on the internet about people sharing their experience, and it's great. You
Mm-hmm.
can learn from a lot of people without having to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
So, I guess I would honestly just say just being willing to try, fail, try something else
Yes.
has really been great. And talking to, just as I've matured, I've been able to have better conversations with people, because
Yeah.
once you've actually had the experience of trying something, it's not just this, abstract
Yeah.
concept of what it's like to do a craft show. Or, I remember when I was in art school during my last year there, they had this, in quotes, business class. And, I was really excited that the school even had something like that. But at that point, I'd already been making my living for 9 years, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was really interesting to see what this teacher, whose experience was really teaching, it wasn't selling and making a living. And so it was really funny to kind of hear how they were abstracting, like, okay, now we have an expert on craft shows, and now we have an expert on, being an apprentice or different things.
Yeah.
And it's just it's hard when you don't know what you're in for. It's just so much better, for me at least, to just do it and then be like, okay, this worked. I got this out of it. I mean, none of my failures have ever not taught me something.
Mm-hmm. And I so agree with you, because when you said being open to just trying things, the first thought that came into my mind was this podcast. I've been doing it now for 6 years. And when I first started, I had actually only just discovered podcasts about 4 or 5 months before. And nobody really was listening to podcasts that much back then. And I thought, well, I want to do one. I want to start one. I, of course, went to YouTube trying to figure out how to do it. And, I started 2 other ones before this one, not with anything to do with Etsy, but just other things I was interested in, and lost interest quickly. But I feel like you're so right in that you have to be open to trying things that you might not have tried and be willing to fail before you figure out what works and what works well for you. Because it wasn't until I started, this was my third podcast, and, I had already, done two that, I wouldn't say they failed. I lost interest, and I, really didn't know what I was doing. And then this one came, and in the beginning, I still didn't know what I was doing, but I was like, I like these conversations. I can keep going. And then you just figure out what works and what doesn't. And I think that can be translated into running our creative businesses as well. Just be ready and open and willing to fail in order to be successful eventually.
Yeah. I think too that it's just good in life, I mean, I remember when I was starting out, and I don't even remember about failure per se, but I remember going over this big making a phone call to somebody to follow up on a lead, or like if I had mailed them something. And I would just, I don't want to do this, I'm too nervous. And then I just said, you know what? If I do it now, I'll be done with it in 10 minutes, and then it sort of trained me to like set myself up for potential failure.
Yes.
And then you get used to that. And then the more that you don't fail, it just builds your skill sets,
Yeah. One of the things I tell, people who've asked, where, when they're like, well, how do you get your guests? And I said, well, in the beginning, I would just cold email Etsy sellers, through the Convo process. And, I got so used to rejection because, like I said, podcasts weren't popular then. Nobody knew who I was. And here I am, like this spammer saying, hey, do you want to come on my show? And, you have to
tell me all your secrets.
Yeah, exactly. Tell me what you're doing on Etsy. And it was, some people might have thought that was creepy because I got so much rejection. Like, no, block, don't message me again. I'm like, no, I'm not creepy. I'm doing something here. I promise you, it's above board. But, had I not gone through that, I don't know if I would even enjoy it as much, because even just all the no's and the rejection helped me appreciate so much the people who said yes. Because when I would get a yes, I would almost be like, wait, what? You do? Yeah. You want to talk? Okay.
God, I don't know what I would do without podcasts. They really get me through the day sometimes.
Yeah, I'm glad that they're getting more popular now.
Yeah, me too.
Because I listen to them all the time as well.
You're like the Mark Maron of Etsy podcasting.
Oh, what? Well, thank you. That's an honor.
Maybe you'll interview Martha Stewart someday, like he interviewed Obama.
I know. I saw that in his garage too.
Yeah.
I laughed so much. I was like, man, that is so grassroots. But then they had the whole Secret Service there as well.
Yeah, that's right. Oh my God.
That was too funny.
One was crazy. Yeah, that was great.
Now, Hilary, you've been selling on Etsy for a while. So I think you will have some good advice for a seller who is listening now that has also been selling on Etsy for a while and is weathering all the storms of change on Etsy. What would you say to that person listening now?
Well, one thing that I didn't realize that I had neglected until this year when I was anticipating opening this retail space, was that I had sort of let some things sort of get stale, like my profile description, my policies, even my photos. Like I was using a different photo as my, I don't know if masthead's my banner.
Yes.
When you go in. And so, I went and looked back in. I thought, oh, that's really outdated. And, I forgot to take off my mention of my holiday sale on there, or stuff like that. And so there's so much you can go and look in and then really just look at it like a user. And another thing I've been doing, which I've never done before, but is looking at it on my phone and on my computer.
Huh.
Because like for me personally, I'm of a generation that I don't like to shop on my phone, but that's not the trends now.
No.
And so I want it to look good in both places,
Yeah.
and read well. And then another thing I've just recently kind of, since they've put 10 picture options rather than 5, I've been really focusing on trying to use all of those. And then somewhere along the line, it could have been your podcast or could have been something else I read, I can't remember, but somebody suggested to me, like, they don't have to all be pictures of that unicorn. You can have a picture of to show off your packaging. Because like for me, I buy biodegradable peanuts. And so there's no, it's the best thing to pack my stuff for shipping. I have no breakage problems, but I don't want to buy styrofoam. And I used to be able to get, reused peanuts from other people, but I'd much rather go with this biodegradable.
Right.
They're just like potato starch or something. So why not show that off, because people love to know that there's an eco-friendly aspect.
So true.
Besides the fact that I reuse, use old wood, but, and then I have another picture that's of the inside of my shop. And I'm just like, that's where I sort of mention that I have a caption that says made from, over 75% reclaimed wood. And then I have this sticker I made that goes on the outside of every package, and it says something like, "Hooray, you got a package from Bunny with a tool belt. Open it, open it." And so I have a picture of that on there. So you sort of like, oh, this is going to look cute, And then I'm also a big proponent, so this could fall under advice too, of there's a company here in town called Color Magic that prints just like 4x6 full color cards. And I have those made up for different things. Like every time I have a Kickstarter, I make, a couple hundred, and then I can pass them out to people. And I have some that go in all my packages. And one of them is just sort of like a condensed version of my website. So it sort of shows you like, hey, look, you bought this unicorn. Well, I also make playing cards, and I also do books, and I also have done some public art, and I've also, like sign up for my email list. I have contests sometimes, just sort of a friendly way to sort of give a bigger picture. And then I have another card that's like a picture of me and like a short 2-paragraph, sort of like a mini resume, and then have a couple products on the back that I make. And then that card is really great because it doesn't have any website on it. So then, I can throw it in when I sell through another party, and they don't feel like I'm trying to take away their business. It just serves as a biography. So, and then now I've got one for the window. So, just trying to kind of have something you can hand to somebody whenever you need it. But I put them in my packages too.
I think
so. Now anybody who gets an Etsy package sees that I have a window. So if they travel to Portland, maybe they'll make it a destination.
Can check you out. Yeah, I really like the idea of including the 4x6 cards with whatever information one would want to include, whether it's advertising other products or your website, as well as the sticker. I really like the sticker on the box. It's like your own Amazon, you know how all the Amazon boxes come with the logo. Yeah. Do you, if you don't mind, can you share what printer you used for that, so that if someone else wants to maybe do something similar and brand their own packaging that way, they can?
Yeah, I used my same printer who does the cards.
Oh, your local printer.
Yeah, and okay. I know that they ship, so there's no reason anybody, well, probably in the U.S., I'm not sure. Well, maybe they do international. I don't really know, but I like it because I can go pick up my orders, so I save that little bit. But
can you tell me their name again, please?
Yeah, Color Magic.
Color Magic. Okay. All right. I will find their website and link to it so that if anyone wants to, well, first of all, go to Bunny with a Toolbelt on Etsy and look at any of Hilary's products, and you will see all these pictures of what she just described, which I like that idea so much, because sometimes if I'm selling something, I can't get 10 pictures in. And so I feel like I'm wasting some spaces. So this is a good idea to include packaging and just other information that to fill up those 10 spaces. And
I just remembered I did another thing too. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah,
but
go on.
But sometimes I fill up those spaces with custom or similar pieces. So if I've got an elephant and I use my four pictures to show the elephant, then I use like 2 or 3 to show the craziest elephants I ever made. And then in the description, I'm like, also pictured are some other things. If you want a custom thing, let me know.
Have you ever had anyone get confused that might be part of what they're buying?
No, I'm always worried about it though.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so I will link to that. Are there any other resources that you use in running your business that you found particularly helpful?
Well, I've also been kind of like, I took this SEO class locally recently, and so then that's kind of gotten me into, like, I listened to your podcast with the guy from, what's it called?
Etsy Rank, Anthony Wolf?
Yeah, Etsy Rank. Yeah. That was a really good one. And I started looking into his site. And then and Etsy Jam I listened to. I think they've got some good information. And, and I've kind of tried out their platform too. I think that I think SEO, like, I don't want to go too deep down that rabbit hole in general, but I think it's really given me some good ideas that I hadn't that it's really helped with a lot of my listings that were, I have so many things in my Etsy shop. It's really easy to sort of, to not realize that, like the other day I was looking into why my Santas weren't higher on their ranking. And I realized, for some reason, all my materials were down or all my tags were down in the materials.
Down? So, you had them in the wrong place.
Well, they transferred to the wrong place because I think I duplicated that listing and something weird happened. So that made me realize, I really got to go in with a fine-tooth comb. And so I think that's one benefit to the SEO thing, is it's a good starting point, you know, for kind of just seeing how you can improve the way you talk about what you do.
Yes, SEO is hugely important, and unfortunately, as sellers, we can't ignore it. Yeah. And so anything that anyone can do to educate themselves, I would say, before you even subscribe to any tool, first of all, understand what it is. Yeah. Then that way, using a tool will be more efficient and more effective, because then you understand what your goals are and what you're aiming for, what you're trying to do before you start using tools to help you do that. And I don't think I've said that before, but I just realized that sometimes people might not really understand the whole goal of SEO. So first, understanding what SEO is, which for anyone who doesn't know, stands for search engine optimization. And it's basically a way to make your listings show up when they should show up at, in good positions in search. So you want them to show up in higher in the rankings in search. And so you need to understand how to do that. And there are ways to do that. And then once you understand how, then there are tools to help you do that. So once you get through the how and the why, then start investigating the tools to help you with the how.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think too, I take a little bit of that ranking, with a grain of salt, just because, my items aren't going to fit into some of the more on trend categories ever. Yeah. But that doesn't mean I don't have an audience. And it doesn't mean that I don't have people that don't search for the kind of things I sell. But I think that, and also it's very current, like whatever the SEO is, it's about what's happening now.
Now, right.
So if I'm trying to figure out why my Christmas stuff doesn't have a higher ranking, it's because it's August right now, Yes.
Yes.
So I'm just planning on just kind of using it for a month and then checking back in maybe around Halloween to see how my Halloween things rank, and then checking in again around Christmas to test those things out. And I don't want it to be a monthly expense because I think it's way too much of my time I waste on that kind of
And
activity.
thank you, Hilary, for mentioning that. I'll tell you a couple of things that you said. One was your products, you don't consider them like trendy per se, but you have an audience who is shopping for them. And I just want to point that out. I was having a conversation via email with another seller who has who's in a similar situation where the products that they're selling are not exactly trending, like trendy if you were to look at Etsy's what's trending. However, there is an audience for those products. There are buyers for that product who are, I would refer to them as evergreen customers. So these are people who shop, who are specifically looking for those products, and they might not have searched for it today, yesterday, or within the last month that you see what's trending, but or I shouldn't say that. They might have, but maybe not have shown up in the numbers that would make them count in Etsy's what's trending now data, but they're there and they're shopping, and they will find you because they're looking for what you're selling. And so for sellers who might feel discouraged that you don't see your products show up in the trending searches or what have you, don't be discouraged, because if there's a market for your products, they will find you. You just have to cater to them and not try and cater to what's trending, because my products are never trending, but people buy them still. So that's okay.
Yeah, and that's where I think that these two companies that we've mentioned before or websites are really helpful, is that you can figure out what keywords help sell your product, or what are people searching for when they're trying to look for what you're selling. And that is so good to know.
Yes.
And think about as a retailer.
Yes. Fantastic. Now, I didn't ask you this beforehand, so if you don't have one, don't worry. But do you have an Etsy shop shout out? This would be another seller or an Etsy shop that you particularly like, or somebody in the Etsy community that has just been helpful to you along the way, and you just want to say thank you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, great.
I would shout out my cousin, Tripper Dungan.
Oh, yeah.
TripperDungan. He's a painter. He does some pretty out there stuff, but he's awesome. He's so creative and good, and he's like a brother to me. I love knowing somebody who we can, kind of be, even though what we're doing is different, has different audiences, we often share a craft booth together, and
nice.
His daughter's my goddaughter, and it's all good. So
great.
Go look at his site.
is his Etsy shop Tripper Dungan?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. I will link to that in the show notes for this episode. So good to know. Now, Hilary, what's the best way people can reach you if they want to get in touch?
I do it through my Bunny with a Toolbelt site. There's a contact link. If I'm doing a custom order through Etsy, which I do a lot, I really prefer people contact me through Etsy. Okay. And my website really leads people back that direction, just because it's really hard for me to keep track of all the details if it's in multiple spots.
Okay. And
with Etsy, usually what I do is I do a custom listing after working out details. So if it's something in particular about a purchase, that's the best way. But there's a contact link on my site too.
Okay. Hilary, there are so many other things I wanted to talk with you about. So I want to invite you back, because one of the things that you've done is you've gotten some really good media coverage, which I know is like, for some people, the great, what's that word? The Holy Grail, getting in print magazines. And so I would love to have you back again to talk about just how we can get featured in publications and do things in a unique way. I know you're in the process of, you want to take more classes and learn more about running a business. So I feel like you're going to come back with even more knowledge. So can we do this again sometime in the near future?
I have a lot to say about that. So
okay, very
anytime.
good. Thank you so much. And again, to check out Hilary's shop, it's Bunny with a Toolbelt on Etsy, and her website is bunnywithatoolbelt.com. I will link to both in the show notes for this episode so you can check them out. She also has a blog, which I will link to as well. If you want to hop over there right now and take a look at it, it's bunnywithatoolbelt.blogspot.com, but I will also link to that too. Hilary, thank you so much for spending almost an hour and a half talking with me. We need a part 2.
It was really fun to talk with you. Really fun.
Thank you. I enjoyed this. And
you've been in my head forever.
Oh, I'm glad that we were able to do this then.
Yeah.
And now we have a second one coming up.
Cool. Cool.
And I thank you for listening to the podcast. I will be back next time. Thanks again for listening to the podcast. If you would like to support the Etsy Conversations podcast, I have set up a way for you to do that. If you go to convome.com/support, or if you just go to convome.com, there's a tab called Support the Podcast. You can click on it. And if you would like to donate to the podcast, you can do so. It's through PayPal. You can send a donation. Any money donated goes back into the podcast to just cover the expenses for running the podcast. And I would appreciate your support. Thank you.